Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? The New Orleans Saints and the other 31 NFL teams are all in Indianapolis right now at the Combine. And the on-field workouts are set to get underway, but first it's the interview process where teams have the opportunity to meet one-on-one with certain prospects. And we did learn, courtesy of our buddy Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints, who's there at the Combine, that Chris Olave did, in fact, meet with the Saints. So Olave is one of the two-headed monster from Ohio State alongside with Garrett Wilson, who are both entering the draft, and both are expected to be high first-round picks this year. Wilson graded out as the best receiver in the draft by most. Olave shortly thereafter. And there's a couple of ties there. Of course, the Saints have been certainly known to be fond of Ohio State players. There are currently 6 former Buckeyes on the roster, and there have been more. Von Bell, obviously, is a guy who was an Ohio State player who's now in Cincinnati. Dare I mention Eli Apple, former Buckeye as well, who did, in fact, spend some very forgettable time with the New Orleans Saints. But Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis and this front office, they have clearly been fond of Ohio State players. And Sean Payton is gone. Dennis Allen is now in. It will be curious to see if that pipeline continues. No reason to believe that it wouldn't. But Chris Olave did talk about his meeting with the New Orleans Saints during his Combine interview process.
It was a great meeting. Love to be there. New Orleans is a good city. I played in New Orleans one time against Clemson, and ended up being good. So that would be a great organization, like I said. And Mike Thomas is there. They got a lot of Buckeyes there. And I'd love to keep that Buckeye pipeline.
Did talk about Mike Thomas, the Buckeye pipeline there. He mentioned the Ohio State-Clemson game. That was in the Superdome. That was the Sugar Bowl in January of 2021, where Ohio State beat Clemson 49-28. Olave in that game had 6 catches for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. So not a bad day in the Caesars Superdome for Chris Olave, and maybe might very well want to make that his home. And he kind of had a little grin on his face when he talked about how he would love to play in New Orleans. The other thing is, assuming the Saints do draft a receiver in the first round or high in this draft, that receiver is going to be playing alongside Michael Thomas. Something else, as we mentioned there with the Buckeye connection, is Michael Thomas is, of course, a former Ohio State receiver as well. And Olave and Thomas apparently do have a relationship.
I talked to Mike Thomas a couple times, called him a couple times. He gave me a lot of advice. He's a great role model to me, one of the best receivers in the game for previous years and years to come. So just to be able to communicate with him, and he's an Ohio State legend. So just to be able to, like I said, communicate with him and send texts back and forth and see from his perspective what they expect, and just to be able to use him as a guy to lean on. I feel like it's huge. So
I think that would bring a lot of synergy within the receiver room if you had one of these Ohio State guys come in. Not to mention the fact that they're 2 of the top receivers in this draft. You'd pair them alongside Michael Thomas. You have a new receivers coach coming in Cody Burns. I presume Jameis Winston is going to remain the Saints starting quarterback, that they'll get a deal done. We'll talk about that coming up a little bit more. But I like the idea of Wilson or Olave. The big question for me is, how big of a gap is there between those two? Or if you want to throw in a guy like a Treylon Burks or a Jahan Dotson or any of the other receivers, Jamison Williams from Alabama, who of course is coming off the torn ACL. What is the gap among those receivers in the eye of Saints scouts? That's really the big question. We talked about Mel Kiper's mock draft where he had the Saints trading up from 18 to 14 to take Garrett Wilson. Now, if the Saints have Garrett Wilson graded as the best receiver in the draft, and you can move up 4 spots and it costs you maybe a 3rd-round pick, which, the Saints have that, as far as a compensatory pick anyway, okay. I mean, if that's who they have graded as the best receiver in the draft. But if you stand pat at 18, even if Wilson's off the board and you have the opportunity to take Olave or Burks or Jahan Dotson or Jamison Williams or any of the guys I mentioned, Or maybe you wait into round 2 and maybe a guy like George Pickens from Georgia is there, who I think is, if healthy, better than all of these guys. If healthy, that's the big if. That's why the combine's real big about the medical there. But I really like the idea of having either of these guys. We talked about how Garrett Edwards, his projected 40 time is in the 4.4 range, averaged right under 15, right at about 15 yards a catch. During his time at Ohio State, over 4 years, Olave averaged 14.4 yards per reception, so very similar in that respect. 65 catches for 936 yards. A guy who came back for his senior year and produced. A guy who came back his senior year with that opportunity to gain even more notoriety, which he did, and produced at a high level. So Chris Olave would be, I think, a great option there in round 1 if the Saints stand pat at 18, and let the draft come to them. The other sort of interesting storyline throughout all of this kind of suggests that this is even further evidence that the Saints are going to stick with Jameis Winston. Here's what I mean. Yes, they are absolutely going to keep an eye on all of the quarterbacks at the combine this week. And they'll work them out at Pro Day, and no doubt kept an eye on the guys at the Senior Bowl that were there. But sometimes the circumstantial evidence surrounding a situation kind of tells you the story. Here's what I mean. For the last month, we've seen a lot of mock drafts that had the Saints taking a quarterback, depending on who it might be. Some had Kenny Pickett. Some had Matt Corral. I mean, you've seen them. A lot of most mock drafts had the Saints taking a quarterback in round 1. Well, Mel Kiper puts out his latest mock draft, and now the Saints are taking a receiver, moving up to take a receiver, not taking a quarterback. And the Saints are now interviewing Chris Olave, which, of course, they should do their due diligence on all of these players at the combine while you have the opportunity. But then you also hear the news that, from Pete Carroll at the combine, that Seattle is not fielding any trade requests for Russell Wilson. And that Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay seemed to be reaching an amicable decision to remain wed. So if Rodgers is staying put and Wilson is staying put, and you're the Saints, you're looking, okay, do you go all in on Jameis, or do you take a bigger risk and hope that you have your guy there for you in the draft? I think it starts to crystallize a little more where the Saints are leaning, and that is re-sign Jameis Winston, get Michael Thomas back healthy, draft another weapon for Jameis Winston, and say, all right, dude, you've been biding your time for 2 years now. You're healthy. You got Michael Thomas back. Here's your number 1 wide receiver. Here's another player in free agency, whoever it may be. Healthy offensive line. Grip it and rip it, and let's see if we can do something special with this offense. That, for me, feels like a better plan than let Jameis walk, draft a quarterback who's probably not going to be very good as a rookie, maybe a frustrated receiver group, which probably overachieved, even though they were dead last in the NFL in passing offense, probably overachieved a little when you're asking Marquez Callaway or Deontay Harris to be a number 1. Now, all of a sudden, with a lesser quarterback situation, new coach, now it does look more like rebuild instead of reload in an NFC, which man, it feels wide open. I know you got Rodgers there in Green Bay, but just look at your division. I mean, if your ticket to the playoffs begins with winning your division, Brady's gone in Tampa. What's that going to be, Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask? You don't know who the quarterback's going to be in Carolina. And Matt Ryan has regressed each of the last 3 years in Atlanta, and they're just no good. It's a wide open possibility for whoever's there in New Orleans to go win right now. So see if you can do it. And I think this is the best path for it. Resign Jameis, draft if it's Wilson, if it's Olave, if it's any of the other first-round receivers who might be a target. That feels like a better strategy. Look, if it's Chris Olave, you bring in a guy that's 6'1", 190, who can fly and has been productive, and is a smart player from an offensive system where you've drafted guys before and they've done very well, I'd be all for it. So Saints interviewed Chris Olave at the Combine, and he kind of smiled when he talked about how much he'd like to be in New Orleans, and you can understand why, because of the success a lot of those guys from Columbus have had in the black and gold. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.